people have wanted me to watch this for a while. Apparently, there's been some Ubisoft devs that have talked behind the scenes about how things are going, and it doesn't seem like it's very good.
Things at Ubisoft are far worse than I ever could have imagined. After my last video chronicling the rise and fall of Ubisoft, I had both current and former Ubisoft developers reach out for comment.
Of course they did.
Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the issues that the studios face today from the perspective of their own employees. Everything from Me Too movement allegations to agenda-driven content.
Well, it wasn't a Me Too movement allegation. Ubisoft went through an entire lawsuit process because of that.
I want to contrast the comments made in these interviews with what we've seen from Assassin's Creed Shadows and Star Wars Outlaws.
Yeah.
This company has a deep-rooted leadership issue, going as far to think that the vast majority of online criticism is just a toxic minority of gamers.
Of course.
This company and its leadership think that they are on the righteous path. Little do they know, it's a dead end.
That sounds so stupid, but I believe it. And the reason why I believe it is because the CEO cited critic reviews for their games as a barometer for what the game's reception was. Like, I don't want to believe this, but I feel like I have to.
Assassin's Creed Shadows has been steeped in controversy and criticism since its initial reveal. Online discourse surrounding the game has been almost entirely negative, with long-term fans of the franchise, general audience, and Japanese audiences up in arms over the creative liberties that Ubisoft has taken with the depiction of Yasuke, the fabled Black Samurai, and feudal Japan. Japanese creators, as well as just random bystanders, have taken to Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube and Reddit, voicing their concerns offended by the game's representation of their history and culture. Inaccuracies like using Chinese architecture instead of Japanese, the legitimacy and relevance of the game's protagonist, Yasuke, and even going as far as stealing a flag and imagery from the Sekihara Teppo Tai, a historical reenactment group where the company had to formally apologize for not asking for permission to use their materials. Ubisoft
White people just never stop colonizing. It's just what we do. Yeah, bro, we just can't help ourselves. We just can't stop. Just can't. We have to keep doing it.
Ubisoft's adventure into Japanese history has been a complete disaster, and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
On September 11th of 2024, an article was penned by the New York Times titled "The Fight Over a Black Samurai in Assassin's Creed." The writer, Zachary Small, misrepresents the controversy and player concerns as merely those of a toxic minority of angry Western gamers, and the entire time he fixates on the race of Yasuke and not the broader implications at play in Ubisoft's mishandling and the frank disrespect for Japanese culture and history. This article was a collaboration between Ubisoft and the New York Times in an attempt to redirect the discussions surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows and minimize the feedback. The writer spoke with Kazuma Hashimoto, a consultant and translator for the games industry, later to be found out to be an employee of Sweet Baby Incorporated that did consultant work for Ubisoft. But
there's no bias, there's no agenda here at all, guys. Yeah, they're just reporting the facts.
Hashimoto claimed that it was people in the West who were upset with seeing Yasuke as a samurai, and that many of the online negative comments were written in Japanese, appeared to be roughly translated from English.
True. Actually true. And this is what journalists excel at. Journalists excel at telling half-truths, but focusing on the lie.
Hand-waving the increasingly loud and valid concerns of the Japanese, asserting that it's all made-up outrage. Nothing more than the gamers' war against DEI or inclusivity in video games. I find it all too poetic and predictable for a AAA publisher to brush off player concerns and use their connections in the media to try to steer public discourse and sentiment into a favorable direction. All of these claims made by the New York Times, as well as other writers, are patently false. You can see
the problem is that I think this is a big issue, is that like traditional like print media is losing a lot of its relevance, and I think it's accelerating that loss. And I think that really like they're getting eaten from like so many different perspectives. Like, for example, people's literacy levels and ability to read information, I think, is going down. Like, people are just bad at reading now. They can't read. And not only can they not read, but even if they could read, they don't have the attention span if to even want to read. So basically, they don't give a shit. Kids barely speak nowadays. Exactly. So you have like a lower amount of people that you can reach fundamentally, right? Because of that. And then you also have the issue where people are so radicalized about ideologies that they're unwilling to like listen to anything other than like what they've already heard. And I think that you put all of these problems together, and guess what you have? You have an audience of people, and then also, of course, like the media is, of course, like misrepresenting things. And I think that also one of the big problems the internet has presented for the media is that, like, you know, in the year 1985, the channels of broadcast were very limited. And so you couldn't really have a real contrary opinion because so many of these channels were monopolized by billion-dollar forces. But now on the internet, you can see things like WikiLeaks and stuff like that that can hold big corporations and big entities accountable in ways that they can't control. And I think this can be as big as something like WikiLeaks, or it can be in as little as something like this video game. And ultimately, that has done more to damage the credibility of print media than anything else, because it's shown that print media is oftentimes used as a tool for these organizations to maintain their power structure.
The criticisms of Ubisoft's recent releases and the future release in Assassin's Creed Shadows everywhere. It's impossible to ignore. Videos and promotional material ratioed by dislikes and comments in mass numbers. Videos like mine and many others reaching widespread appeal because we have that many people that agree or share similar opinions. With that said, I couldn't imagine that it was...
I think also it's that he brings up a very good point that seems very stupid and face value, but I think it's incredibly accurate, is that when you see videos that are extremely successful and get tons of views that agree with you, it makes people think that they're not crazy and that their opinions are valid. I think that's the reason why YouTube removed the dislike bar, because the dislike bar was used against things that, you know, I would say brands didn't want to see happen. Like, because if you see, oh, everybody else hates this, how many of you guys have ever read an article or done something and like you think the article's awful, and then the main top comment is saying exactly what you think, and it's like, yes, thank God I'm not crazy. Have you guys ever had this happen? Yeah, the dislike bar hurt tutorials though? No, it did, but it hurt everything. Right, exactly. And so we have this happen a lot. And I think what the outcome of that is that people are able to see that the like mainstream, I guess you could say, quote, narrative is not really the mainstream. It's just the most pushed.
Possible for anyone to ignore this level of feedback, and Ubisoft has to be seeing it. So I spoke with a few developers from Ubisoft to shed some light on these issues. I started off by asking how Ubisoft internalizes and discusses general criticism from players and the rest of the industry, whether that's its repetitive design, agenda-driven content, or predictable games. They responded saying, at a high level, they rarely talk about it. At a project level, they brush it off as toxic gamer talk. As Asmongold correctly pointed out in a video of his, Ubisoft is filled with toxic positivity that prevents any growth.
How about that? How about that? That's crazy. People always wonder, why is it that everybody watches me? This is the reason why. It's because I've been fucking right. Yeah, I've been right. That's why. And also, by the way, I don't think that I'm being totally honest. I actually don't think that I'm like incredibly intelligent. But what I think that I do have is I have an insanely good memory, and I can make decisions on things based off of more factors than the average person can. And because of that, if I see something like this, I can think of more things in the past, like, oh yeah, this other thing. I put all that together, and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. But this is why people watch the videos. Ego going up? It is. Absolutely. But I was right.
I then asked, what about the Japanese community's backlash over Assassin's Creed Shadows? It's obvious that they haven't done their research, and even the smallest details are going to be noticed by a culture that's as proud as the Japanese. They responded by saying that the criticisms haven't been talked about, and they've only issued demands that we mustn't engage with discussion on that topic publicly.
Just don't talk about it. Problem solved.
Meaning everything that we've said up until this point, all the criticism that we've had over the years for Ubisoft games, even that of the industry itself, has fallen on deaf ears. I don't know if it's sad or if it's somewhat, it's somewhat cathartic to have that validated. I mean, it's the main complaint.
Well, it's obvious. I mean, again, like, you don't have to be a fucking genius to admit this or to acknowledge this. I feel like, again, you know, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I feel like that's how I feel a lot of times saying this stuff. I don't think this is any sort of fucking revelation. This isn't any sort of like, wow, this is some divine insight that's brought to me in a dream. No, it's common fucking sense this would happen. Of course.
That the vast majority of gamers have had over the years, which is that these companies aren't listening to us. And in this case, I have developers that are telling me, yeah, they're not listening to you.
Of course.
One, because they don't want to take criticism, and two, because they don't know how to differentiate bad from good criticism.
Of course.
I think this is my patented catchphrase by now, but when you have this much negative discourse surrounding your games, you need to be listening, regardless of whether or not it's good or bad feedback in your eyes, regardless if you align with these people's political beliefs or social political beliefs.
This is a problem that a lot of artists have, and it's a problem that I think that artists that are trying to exist in a commercial space have, because a lot of artists believe in the moral good of whatever art they're making. Like, very few artists believe that they're actually like morally bad people. And so because they think that they're doing a good thing, well, they view anybody who's criticizing them as a morally bad person. I think that's what happens the most. Is it arrogance? Well, it's arrogance, but like it's a simplification. What I'm saying is that artists view their art as a expression of themselves. And in the process of them feeling it like an expression of themselves, they take criticism against it personally, and it's why they have a harder time listening to feedback and criticism.
Whatever it might be. None of that matters. When you have your games on fire as much as Ubisoft games have been lately, you need to put those fires out somehow. And the only way that you can do that is by listening to them.
Yeah, of course.
And implementing whatever feedback you possibly can into your games to make them better. Regardless, the other thing is, I'm sorry. I am disgusted by the blatant, feigned virtue over how much they care about Japanese culture and history. I'm sorry. You are bastardizing Japanese culture and history for profit. That's...
As I said, bro, like, we're white people, right? This is what we do. We take over somebody's culture, we change it, and then we say, thank God for us. We've saved you. We've saved you from yourselves. This is what we do. We've been doing it for a really long time, and it's just happening again.
That's what you're trying to do here. You're not trying to make a history piece. We know that it's loosely based on, very loosely based on Japanese culture and history. Look at you guys. You put out a Torigate figurine, a half Torigate figurine with your characters on it, without knowing the cultural relevance of the half Torigate. After
got destroyed in World War II.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Do you have any idea what that means to these people?
They use Tectone as a consultant for this.
What's wrong with you? At the end of the day, it all comes down to leadership.
It's actually very easy to understand what's wrong with them. There are people that are bored. They have a tremendous sense of internalized guilt, and they think by doing this kind of stuff, they're being a good person. Once you understand that most people's actions are only taken in order to make themselves feel better or to serve some personal goal, then as soon as you figure that out and you start operating under that pretense, everything else that a person does makes immediate sense. Pepega, I'm helping. Yeah, exactly. It's self-righteousness. Exactly it is.
When you look at Ubisoft's messaging, the lackluster delivery of titles like X-Defiant and Star Wars Outlaws, the inaccuracies and screw-ups with Assassin's Creed Shadows, You see a developer that has no clear plan or vision for what players want, what good games look like, or how to even do their job. I took the time to talk to the Ubisoft developers about workplace culture, about the initiative that they've taken for diversity hiring, and what happens behind the scenes at Ubisoft. And it's wild to see how accurate some of the assumptions that have been made by myself and others. Now, continuing my conversation with one of the developers, I wanted to find more about the workplace structure and management. And seeing as though the company has had initiatives that have been put in place to make the workplace a little bit more diverse, I asked, what benefits have you seen? Is there more diversity in thought, or is it creating a more one-sided environment? They said that so far the initiative hasn't had any impact on the team that I'm a part of. However, it's clear that some topics are taboo.
Right.
What happened is now that people end up in a meeting with HR for trivial stuff, not adding smiley faces to a message or adding an exclamation point at the end of a message because some people are reporting it for harassment.
I could easily believe this. 100%. Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that wasn't in your video is that Ubisoft had some controversy during the Me Too period, letting go of a manager in high positions, and some left on their own because they knew they'd be discovered. I then asked, what was the impact of this in the workplace? They responded by saying the editorial direction and overall mindset shifted from the boys club to safe content, reaching for...
Is this a video about Blizzard or Ubisoft? Wait a minute. Hold up. What's this?
Plain characters like Kay in Star Wars is a perfect example of this. The idea to have beautiful characters such as Baldur's Gate or Uncharted is met with distrust.
Of course.
The developer shared sentiments saying that safe content also leads to limited opportunities on the gameplay side. Even for Star Wars, we had to work with Disney, which would shut down most attempts at depicting a true criminal underworld with cruelty and drama.
Naturally.
When you put this developer's perspective in line with the recent failures and controversies at Ubisoft or any AAA developer...
So they're basically implying that they probably would have gone farther with Star Wars Outlaw, but they weren't able to because of Disney. I immediately believe that. I do. I think that makes so much sense. Yeah, probably true.
At this point, it all makes sense. An overcorrection in sensitivity brought on
by by the way, seems crazy because, like, didn't Disney, Disney owns Marvel, right? Like, Thanos is probably one of the greatest gray area characters that we've ever had. At least in, like, recent, like, superheroes. I think he's probably one of the best, if not the best, like, superhero cinema, like, gray area character. I mean, what the fuck? Like, why not do that with Star Wars?
Boys Club days that many studios experienced during their early years. As such, many games today lack the teeth and grit that players crave because those things are seen as problematic or unsafe to make in the workplace.
Well, the problem also is that you have a workplace that's trying to overcorrect for past sins. So, like, for example, they're trying to overcorrect for the fact that they got this whole Me Too problem in their company because they had weirdos that were working there. So now it's effectively the players that have to play a worse version of a product because the company had some sort of internal problem.
Use emojis or exclamation points. You could offend someone. Holy shit.
Yeah.
How soft have we gotten? It reminds me of...
It's also like, that's like a huge, like, that's like a huge indicator. It's like if people are getting called into HR for not using smiley faces or using exclamation marks, think about how painful all the rest of the office experience must be. Because it's not like this, oh, this is the only manifestation of this degree of mental illness. Absolutely not. It's probably everywhere.
Time where the Helldivers 2 community manager went on a ban spree on their Discord because players were using a throw-up emoji on furry art that was posted in their Discord.
By the way, this is actually true. Helldivers let a moderator on their Discord ban people because they thought that furry art was disgusting. It's probably like the most retarded thing that I had seen that company do. Insane. And they didn't like, because if it was me, right, I would have just banned the dev and been like, okay, you're not gonna, this isn't your platform to talk about furry porn. Get out of here. Right? It's disgusting. Yeah, but they let it happen. And as far as I know, this person's still a moderator. Yeah, it's insane that you would even allow that to happen.
Sometimes people need to be offended. While I'm going to try to resist the pull yourself up by your bootstraps tirade, friction
well,
on
the
some...
problem, I think here's the problem. The problem is that there's a lot of reasonable people who try to meet people like that in the middle, and they try to be reasonable with them. But the problem is that these people are not reasonable to begin with. So they're like obnoxious. They have like these weird values. You can't meet these people in the middle because they're never going to be in the middle. They're mentally ill weirdos.
Levels is necessary in life. Now, that doesn't mean that people should be allowed to openly harass others, but there are major issues that arise when you have emojis that can get you fired. This overreaction and overcorrection leads to a workplace that is actively hostile towards freedom of thought, expression, and criticism.
Of course. Yeah, because you have people, and this is the reason why people do this. They also complain to HR. I think that people probably complain like this because it guarantees a degree of job security. Because like in their mind, they're thinking, well, if I'm having all these problems at the company is going to be less likely to get rid of me because maybe they could have some kind of lawsuit or discrimination against themselves. You see what I'm saying? So like there's all of these like metagaming things that are happening.
As one of the interviewees mentioned earlier, they noticed a culture of toxic positivity. From my perspective, toxic positivity is fake people saying fake things, and in the case of Ubisoft, making fake products. Nobody wants to live their entire life being terrified that someone is going to misunderstand them.
Yeah.
And when you're at a studio like Ubisoft and you're not even allowed to make characters attractive, otherwise it might upset people at the studio, you have a problem. This culture of fear and forced uniformity stifles...
Well, the problem... So, like, here's a good example of it, right? Is if, like, they want to add in a... Like, the character... Like, they want to add in, like, a trans character to the game. Like, let's say. You want to add in a trans character, okay. How do you think it sounds and how do you think it's received in the office with people that are trying to push this kind of stuff when you say no? Think about that. Now you're the bad guy. Now you're the one who is like, now you're transphobic. And these people can risk losing their job. Now you're anti-LGBT. Yeah, exactly. So there's a ton of pressure on people. So once this stuff starts getting put into the game, there's no way that these companies can push back against it because everybody is afraid of getting fired or being mislabeled because they think it's not appropriate for a game. I don't feel safe. Yeah, exactly. Now you're not being inclusive. Exactly. So you can easily see how this happens, and it's like basically the problem is only allowed to get worse, and if you try to make it better, you get fired.
Creativity, innovation. It's no wonder that Ubisoft is struggling to produce anything of real substance when their own developers are walking on eggshells, more worried about HR complaints than creating groundbreaking games.
And you shouldn't also get mad at the developers for not wanting to do that. I mean, these guys, a lot of them have been working in the industry for 10 years. They're not going to try to go and, do all this stuff like make themselves look bad. They're not going to fuck up their career over some trans character, especially if they're just like a narrative designer. Like, they just want to do their job.
And you make bold, impactful content when every idea is scrutinized for being too risky, too offensive, or too unsafe. It's a workplace where mediocrity is rewarded and where pushing boundaries, the very things that games are supposed to do, is seen as a liability. This workplace culture, this overreaction and overcorrection has infected just about every single industry that's out there. I worked in construction for 7 years up until last December, and the company that I worked for was more afraid of HR issues than they were of injuries. We worked with hydrogen sulfide and hydrogen cyanide, gases that, if released, could kill half of a city.
Holy fuck.
We've discussed modern audiences, the mythical, magical modern audiences and soft modern games.
This is a problem, and I think that the big issue is that normal people that have like normal opinions and are not insane don't speak out against this enough. And because people like that don't speak out against it, this type of behavior is kind of just allowed to get worse, basically.
Found the audience is the people that are running these companies nowadays. You have folks that are walking
like
around
average
on
people don't push back
eggshells,
enough on
afraid
it.
to say anything. Anecdotal, but just like a few weeks ago or a month ago or so, I remember I was live streaming, and instinctively I said something was retarded.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial. We all grew up saying it. It's a product of my upbringing. Say what you will. I didn't say it consciously. It just came out. And one of my chatters pops up and says, "How often do you say that word?" I banned the fuck out of them. Get the fuck.
Fucking exactly. Wow. A guy that worked in construction used the word retarded. I know some guys in construction. They use a lot of other words besides retarded. Yeah, get the fuck out. Like, what do you mean, how often do I use the word? I use it all the time. Yeah, least offensive construction worker. Yeah, exactly. They're freaks. Like, yeah, well, and more than just being freaks, they're freaks that want to tell you what to do. And I think that's the fundamental problem with it. I don't want to be told what to do. Don't tell me what to say. Don't tell me what not to say. Don't tell me what I'm allowed to have an opinion on. No. Like, I'm going to talk and say how I want. That's it. If people don't like it, now I can't break the terms of service of the website. But other than that, I say whatever the hell I want. Classic retards. What do you expect? Yep.
Fuck out of here with that. Are you kidding me? People that are out there that are waiting, prepared to be offended. I'm sick of it.
As if you're accountable to them. As if you have to explain something to them.
You cannot have workplaces that are out there where every single thing that you say, you have to watch every word that comes out of your mouth. Otherwise, it could be your livelihood. And
that's what happens, right? I feel like right now, like you're seeing like a huge backlash from that, because from like, I would say 2018 to 2022, 2023, this was extremely common. And now it's becoming less and less common. And culturally, I think that people are becoming more aware of how ridiculous it is and the tone policing and control. But yeah, there's always offended bozos. Well, people like that will always want to get mad because they wield power by getting mad. That's how they get attention. And so that's it, pendulum swinging back. And yeah, I think that's a good thing, by the way. That's why I have no problem like saying that kind of stuff and shitting on these people, is because these are the same kind of people that would destroy your livelihood if you said something that they disagreed with. So you should always try to do the same thing to them before they can do it to you, because you know they're going to do it to you for sure. Pendulum isn't swinging back at all. It absolutely is. If you can't see that, you're crazy.
Again, I'm not saying that you can walk around saying anything. That's not what this is. Everybody knows. I think that's the most frustrating.
You can say whatever you want. I mean, if people don't like it, that's up to them, right? I mean, that's the truth. Like, you say whatever the hell you want.
Trading part when you have these kind of conversations is that you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. But the intellectual dishonesty around this kind of thing is just, it's fucking mind-boggling. We have workplace environments that actively work against any type of creative or constructive criticism. That's how you get games like this. This is how games and products are being ruined over time, is because nobody's allowed to criticize things properly. You have places, you have people in the workplace.
There's entertaining pussies. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that, and this is a big issue that I think a lot of people have, is that they try to be reasonable with unreasonable people. When you try to reason with an unreasonable person, compromising with them makes you unreasonable. Never give any ground to a person who's being unreasonable. Never stop and explain things to them. Never try. No, there's no reason. The equation doesn't work. Yeah. Never allow an unreasonable person to have any control in something.
They're like, I don't think that these characters are going to be received well by the fans, but they're not allowed to say anything about it. They can't say it's not hot enough. It's not masculine enough. They can't say that because it's problematic to say so.
Yeah, of course.
Tame and safe are the antonyms of exciting and daring. Baldur's Gate 3.
Well, people don't want to have something that feels like it's created with training wheels on it. That's the problem, is that people don't like art if they feel like the art is inauthentic. And I think that games coming out now feel extremely inauthentic. That's why Baldur's Gate 3 can have pronouns and trans stuff and gay themes and all of that, and nobody gives a shit. It's because the problem was never actually the content. It was the way the content was delivered in the game.
Was exciting and daring. Star Wars Outlaws. Tame and safe.
Yeah, of course.
Whether it's their poor job at representing Japan or the trailers of Assassin's Creed, there are clearly levels of incompetency at work. As many players have pointed out in the game trailers, the promotional materials that are meant to sell the game, you can see frame rate issues, texture issues, poor collision detection, weapons clipping through characters, and more. Controversies aside, this game doesn't look like it's ready for launch, and in fact, its developer just recently came out.
Yeah, they agreed with us.
Canceled their appearance at Tokyo Game Show and announced that the game would be delayed until February. Along with the delay, Ubisoft CEO recently issued a memo to their employees that ended up getting leaked publicly, and it showcases just how out of touch this company is with their players. Rather than acknowledging their real missteps, they're clinging to critic scores, pointing out Star Wars Outlaws had a solid 76 on Metacritic. Oh, I didn't know that you were trying to sell the game to game reviewers. It's
just, how can you be so fucking stupid? When I read that, I was like, I can't believe it. You're actually listening to reviewers over players? How can you do this? What's wrong with you? Are you insane?
It makes a lot of sense, seeing as though that you're completely ignoring player feedback that clearly shows that your game is hovering in mediocrity. Even worse, they believe that Black Friday sales are somehow going to magically turn things around, not realizing that no amount of discounting will make up for a product that fundamentally misses the mark and nobody's interested in. The memo
there's never been a time where making the game cheaper makes the game popular. That's not how it works. People will spend the money on a game if the game's good. It's never been about the money. It's always been about the value.
It's more like a corporate spin than a genuine reflection of failure. No mention of the controversies or deeper issues that are plaguing the company. They talk about how all players want are highly polished games on launch day, when the truth is players are craving meaningful, risk-taking, authentic content, things that Ubisoft hasn't seen in decades. Even in their own memo to their own employees, they can't speak frankly about their mistakes. This sanitized messaging shows just how deeply disconnected the company is from the people that it should be listening to, the players. Interested in the perspective of the employee.
This is the thing that a lot of game studios are starting to realize, is that a game studio no longer has to rely on a middleman in order to communicate with their audience. You don't have to rely on a publication. You don't have to rely on journalists. You don't have to rely on magazines. You don't have to rely on newspapers. All you have to do is put the information out there, and then the public will receive it. That's it. And so, and I think this is a big problem, right? You think about this, like if you're a journalist or you're like a publication, this is a huge issue for you. And you want to take that ability away from them. Because if you take that ability away from them, then you preserve your own purpose of existence. But if they don't need to work through you, then why do you exist? So that's why they keep trying to push back on this stuff. That's why they keep trying to find problems like this.
Employees who received this memo, I had a few questions on their thoughts of the messaging and the leadership of the company. I asked, what has been the message from management to the staff about Ubisoft's declining sales? What do they believe is the reason behind it? They responded, the fun fact is they don't talk much about it. They mainly focus on the fact that they reached their financial objectives, which are mainly achieved through casual player sales, not the vocal gamer minority that are sick of what you described in your video. Also, something to know is that through the years, the number of management floors has increased to ridiculous amounts. So communication is often blurry unless they come directly from HQ, and even then, it's almost...
So this is kind of what happens, is that I think that like with games, it takes a while for like a company's reputation to be like fully eroded. And like for Ubisoft, for example, I think that like this reputation has been eroded with like, let's say Skull and Bones, or I think there was a game before then, I don't remember which one it was, Prince of Persia. And like the reputation isn't really damaged like immediately. It's something that has like a ripple effect. And so it didn't happen and it didn't really affect them until really Star Wars Outlaws, because they came out and they said that Star Wars Outlaws didn't sell very well. So it's very clear that this the idea that there's like a big casual audience that doesn't care about any of these problems, it's very obvious that this is true, but it's also very obvious that this is not always true. And also, even that casual audience will turn on you and will not make purchase decisions based off of different reasons. Like, for example, Concord, or for example, Star Wars Outlaws. Is that, yes, you can rely on them to an extent, but that extent becomes smaller every single day.
Entirely corpo bullshit that isn't useful in the end.
Yeah.
I asked another employee to verify the increase in management at the company, fearing that this is likely one of the biggest issues that's facing the company, seeing that lack of clear and creative vision. They painted a picture of a company that's not only overrun with management, but that's passively aggressive about removing higher paid and talented employees while slotting in underskilled and unexperienced management at a cheaper rate.
The crazy thing about that is that this is something that happens to seemingly every company nowadays. Like, this isn't even a Ubisoft problem. This is just a corporate problem.
They claim that Ubisoft as an employer shows little regard for their developers. What happens in practice is that they essentially push out senior engineers, promoting junior engineers to senior roles after just a few years of experience, oftentimes with experience in just one engine. Meanwhile, experienced developers with far broader skill sets are being overlooked. This constant cycle of turnover with inexperienced leaders leads to noticeable drops in quality, with bugs appearing in their games. The passionate, dedicated developers leave, while those who are just going through the motions stay behind. This doesn't just affect the technical quality of their games, but also impacts the design and creativity.
Yeah, of
For
course.
instance, you'll find designers working on FPS mechanics who have never played an FPS game before.
Man, not surprised. I'm not either, honestly. Makes sense, yeah.
Or engineers who don't understand how the mechanics they're building are supposed to feel. There's a lack of passion and skill across the board, and the results are obvious. That line about designers working on FPS games and leading FPS projects struck a chord with me. Not long ago, Ubisoft released X-Defiant, a military shooter that was meant to compete with the likes of Call of Duty. However, since the game's release, they've lost the vast majority of their player base, with Ubisoft claiming that the game isn't dying, despite it reportedly losing 94%.
You lose 94% of your player base. It's not dying, though. It's doing well. Really? That's crazy. Wow.
Percent of its players on Xbox. Why is X-Defiant ran into so many issues? Netcode, hit registration, and general shooter gameplay issues. Common problems that are normally ironed out well before a game ever hits the market, especially a shooter. It's core to the gameplay. If you're playing a live service shooter, all you
This
do is...
has also happened with Overwatch, too. Is that, like, the hitboxes for Overwatch, I think, recently have been, like, completely fucking changed. And, like, they've gotten worse. So this is happening with tons of big games like this. It might have been fixed by now,
That's
though.
the gameplay. But when the shooting doesn't work, you don't have a game. Ubisoft's leadership is completely disconnected from the reality of game development and player expectations. The problems stem from a bloated management structure that's prioritizing reaching financial targets through casual player sales, rather than listening to the core gaming community that's...
And, like, you really think about, like, what are they really saying? They're saying that we hope to sell games to people that are too retarded to know that they're bad. Hopefully, we're relying on our audience being uneducated and uninformed, and hopefully we'll make sales based off of that. We're selling to casuals that don't know any better. That's crazy. They do? They didn't. If they were actually doing that, see, here's the thing. Blizzard does that. Blizzard does that because Diablo 4, at the end of the day, is a great game for casual dads. It is amazing for your casual dad with fucking 5 jobs, 3 wives, and 10 kids. But the problem is that Ubisoft isn't doing that. That's the issue.
Of their tired formulas. Even their own developers are frustrated as they watch as talented senior engineers are pushed out of the studios and inexperienced juniors are promoted far too quickly, leading to a noticeable drop in quality. It's no wonder their games are riddled with bugs and lack any real innovation. This company is more focused on appearances rather than creating meaningful, engaging content.
I think that's actually a really good point. Is like there's a lot of content nowadays, and I think this is true also with like content creation, is that I notice this a lot with creators, is that a lot of times, like, and this is especially true with like COVID era creators, I feel like almost all of them in like the Among Us era have pretty much totally fallen off. They've lost a lot of their relevance and their popularity. And I think that the reason why is that they were very focused on the way that they were perceived and like kind of making content and trying to appear as if they were popular. And the problem is that that only works for so long. Eventually people move on. Like, think about how many people that were getting, like, let's say 20, 30,000 viewers, 40,000 viewers playing Among Us nowadays can't even break 10K. And it will, by the way, it will never come back. It's not like they're going to come back and be popular again. They'll never be popular again. And to be honest, they should be happy that they were ever popular in the first place because it shouldn't have happened. But it did. Good for them. 10K is good, though. 10K is good. But the majority of them, by the way, are way less than that. I was trying to be nice, okay? Some of them can't even break 1,000.
Of their games doesn't matter as long as they aren't offending anyone. When you see the issues that plague Assassin's Creed Shadows, the pandering, the generic virtue, the lies, the cover-ups, and the lack of understanding of what they're apparently inspired by, when you see how safe and tame, how boring, buggy, and soulless Star Wars Outlaws is, when you see how their most anticipated shooter in X-Defiant is riddled with the most common issues, bugs...
What's crazy about that is X-Defiant, I feel like, was really gassed up when it came out. A lot of people are really positive about X-Defiant, at least like from my perspective. So to see that they totally mismanaged it, I mean, like, how do you let that happen? Yeah, it's nuts.
Kinds of different things that normal shooters would never have on day one, that's made by developers and led by developers that haven't even played an FPS game. You see a studio and a publisher that lacks integrity and a spine. Cowards in leadership roles, afraid to loosen their grip on the wheel. Developers afraid to speak out and unable to express any of their creativity.
Well, it's people are afraid of being painted as something that they're not by people that effectively wield power through grievance. I think that's what happens the most. And like, you can't push back against a lot of these issues because if you're doing that, you're seen as being on the side of the bad people.
This is destined for obscurity. Ubisoft isn't just losing its way, it's already lost. And the only thing left is to watch it burn. You know, it's crazy to speculate about these kind of things, but it's an entirely different beast to find out what you've been believing this entire time is absolutely true. And I want to take the time to thank the developers that reached out to me. It was daring for them to do something like that. Obviously, their identities are being kept secret for very obvious reasons. Most of these folks could lose their job over having these kind of discussions. But
yeah, of course.
Keep in mind, what's really sad about this is that there are developers that are working at these studios that want to see things change, that want to fix things, that see these obvious issues.
I think this is true with a lot of development studios. I've had a lot of people that work in games industry reach out to me too. I haven't really taken a lot of quotes from them and then used them kind of anonymously, but there have been a lot of people that have spoken out to me and like talked to me privately about this. And what he's saying seems very familiar. Not in Ubisoft that I can remember. I could be wrong, but not in Ubisoft.
But they're not allowed to do anything about it. That sucks. It's something that all of us can empathize with. I'm pretty sure that anybody that's watching this video right now has likely worked with some level of management that took them in the wrong direction, and led them down the wrong path. You know, the biggest issue for Ubisoft is that the damage is already done. Their brand is already torched. Their name and their reputation.
It will take them probably 5, if not 10 years to rebuild their reputation. I think that like reputational damage is something that it has like a massive delayed effect. And like 10 years, yeah, maybe, right?
Is in shambles by now.
It's like what I said before, right? Build 100 bridges, suck one dick. You're not a bridge builder, you're a dick sucker. And the reality is like reputation matters a lot. And bringing out, and also by the way, the Ubisoft sucked 100 dicks and they built one bridge. That's the problem.
And looking and seeing that they have pushed back Assassin's Creed Shadows, it's for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. While they're going to say that it's for fixing issues in the game, there's issues that we saw in the trailers, so that's totally believable. The game likely does need more, more time in the oven more than anything else. But outside of that, I really think it's just them trying to distance it from all of the bad press. Because there's a lot of people that have been talking about Ubisoft. There's a lot of people that have been talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it doesn't look good. And pushing it all the way to February, I don't think any of that's going to change anything. If anything, seeing how often they like to put their own foot in their mouth when it comes to Assassin's Creed Shadows, you're just giving me and a bunch of other content creators more time to farm you.
It's true. It's so true. That's 2 more months, guys. Fuck yeah.
Anything else. I was talking to one of the developers about the delay, and they're like, one of the things that really confused the whole group of developers is that they're like, well, we need more time to fix bugs and issues, but we're also going to add more quests and side content. They're like, those two things don't have anything to do with one another, and one creates more issues.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's probably that they decided that the game was incomplete, and there wasn't enough stuff for players to do. There wasn't enough content. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, you push it to February, the month that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Monster Hunter Wilds release. You're cooked. What are you doing?
I think that it's a 5-head decision by Ubisoft to release it that month. Because they've basically decided, we know this game is going to be garbage. So hopefully what we're going to do is we're going to release it in a really popular month where a lot of other games come out, and nobody's going to talk about our game because they're going to be busy playing the other games. Right? So like, yeah, we can just have this one go by under the radar. Nobody's going to be thinking about us, and it'll be okay.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I want to thank everybody. Thank you guys for watching the last video as well.
Nuts,
it was my first 1 million view video. That's just a wild achievement, one that I wasn't really sure that I'd ever be able to achieve. And you guys made that possible, so thank you guys for that. Again, if it wasn't for your guys' support, stories like these wouldn't be able to come out. I hope I get to do more stuff like this in the future because I had a great time making this video. This is probably this is my most favorite video that I've ever made. But yeah outside of that, thank you guys. If you guys have enjoyed the content, make sure that you're sharing these videos. Make sure you like the video. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. What are you doing? Come on, man. Just hop on board. If you guys want to catch me live, you can follow me on Twitch. I'm live 2 days a week. I'm working on videos 4 days a week. I'm sleeping 1 day a week.
That's smart.
But outside of that, my friends, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you guys next time.
This is a really good video. I'm going to link you guys a video. This is really good.
Family.
Look up Ubisoft Avatar Tears of Pandora. CD Projekt Red was in a bad spot. Yeah, it took them a long time to like get out of that. And even now, I think that people are going to be apprehensive about buying Witcher 4. I absolutely think so. So yeah, there's the video. Give it a like. Talk to the Ubisoft devs. It's far worse than we thought. What a fucking surprise. I think that, by the way, it's crazy because of like half of what he was saying, I think is like kind of exclusive to Ubisoft and like probably other companies like Blizzard, for example. But I think that the other half of what he was talking about with like management replacing people, with cheaper people, and then also with like kind of just like more management, creating more management. I feel like this is a corporate issue that happens everywhere. Like it happens all over the place. Yeah, it's way more widespread. Exactly, it is. And I think that's what's going to keep happening. Yeah, I can't wait for Witcher 4. I'm excited for the game too. I'm going to have to play Witcher 3 first and get through everything. I never actually finished the game, but there's the video right there. And widespread issue? Yeah, I think so. It's a combination of both work culture clashing and then making worse products. Thanks for watching, Matt. Yeah, of course. Like, I'm feeling like I think that these issues are probably going to, like, if I look at this now, it seems like it's slightly recovered after going almost under $2. So this is 5 days. It's doing a little bit better. A little bit better. All right. Yep, there we go. Should have bought the dip. I guess so, guys. Yeah, that's not the right stock. It is the right stock. It's an indicator of the stock. We're looking at a sample size. I understand that you might be trying to be smart, but you're not. What's really going to happen is I bet probably I could see this going up continuously until the next update that they provide. I think that's probably what's going to happen, is that people are going to like hope that, oh yeah, it's going to get better, and that's it. How can companies get rid of these terrible employees if they're technically doing their job, but they're just awful for the work culture? You just fire them. What do you mean? How do you get rid of these people? It's easy. You just get rid of them. Like, there's not, it's not complicated. It's just, yeah, if this person is causing trouble, this person's causing problems, they're getting mad all the time, then just fucking get rid of them, right? Stop hiring them. Yeah, exactly. For like being hostile and aggressive and shit like that. Yeah, you don't need an excuse to fire somebody. I think in the UK, actually, in a lot of cases, you do, which is kind of like an issue. I think it's like, it is and it isn't an issue, right? I mean, obviously, there's some, there's some positives to it as well. But I do think that, like, in general, this is going to be it's going to be a bigger problem than I think people give it credit for.